everybody, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Courtney and today I have a really awesome list that I have been working on for quite some time and one that I was really excited about putting on my YouTube channel. So the list that I am doing today is it was going to be a top 5 fairy tale romance or fairy tale retelling romance books. And I just feel like this genre is a little bit untapped for me. I feel like I'm going to read some really good ones in the future, so I might do another list at some point, maybe next year around this time. I just feel like this is fairy tale romance time. I just feel like it's really appropriate to do it during the holidays. But anyways, I did put a lot of work into this. I spent months reading a lot of fairy tale retellings and judging which ones I liked and which ones could or could not make the list. There were a few doozies, and I'm not going to mention those. There were a few that I DNF'd, but these ones I just thought were really spectacular and really original. So without further ado. So the first one I have on the list is The Never King, and it is the first in the Vicious Lost Boys by Nikki St. Crowe. I was avoiding this for a very long time, and I did mention this in another video, but the reason I was avoiding this is because it is a reverse harem. I am not into that. If you know me, then you know that I am very much into exclusivity when it comes to my romance books, but I wanted to try it because I was having a lot of trouble finding fairy tale romance or fairy tale retellings that really vibed with me. You know, they were either not original enough or they were too far from the source material or something. And so I just decided to give it a try. It had a lot of ratings on it. And it is a really short read. So if you are somebody that can't really commit to a really long book, which there are a couple in here that are kind of long, then I would recommend it because it is quick. The Never King is a retelling of Peter Pan, and it has to do with the descendants of Wendy Darling. It's not really about the original Wendy, but she steals his shadow. According to Peter Pan, she steals his shadow and she hides it somewhere. And because of that, his powers are draining. And because his powers are draining, it is affecting Neverland. So whenever a darling is born, he steals that darling away and uses the fairies to basically scramble her brain trying to find out where Wendy hid his shadow. So kind of the descendants of Wendy Darling have all kind of gone mad because they keep getting whisked away, going insane, and then basically put back where he found them. And it starts off with one of the descendants. I'm not sure where down the line she is, but it starts off with this girl who grew up with a mother who seemed very psycho, very mad, because she was always spouting all these things about Peter Pan will find you, Peter Pan will get you. And she kind of didn't really believe her. It seemed like she kind of was like, yep, that's my crazy mom. But then Peter Pan shows up and he kidnaps her and he takes her to Neverland. And it's kind of this interesting dynamic between her and the Lost Boys and Peter Pan. It is a reverse harem, like I said. She does have physical relationships with multiple people in the book, including Peter Pan. As of yet, it doesn't really feel like a romance, but I'm really interested in the story. I am interested to see where it goes. The twists were pretty good. They were just mysterious enough to keep me thinking. And I don't know, if you want a quick read that is a fairy tale retelling, I would definitely recommend it. If you want this incredibly simple spiced hot apple cider recipe, super simple and super fast, I will be putting that in the description below if you want to cook this up for this holiday, because like I said, it's super simple. I make it every year. It's so comforting and it's so tasty, and I think you should just all try it. The next one that I have on my list is Heir of the Tide, and it is the first in the Villainous Heir series by Louise Shepard. Okay, so I have talked about this book before, and I am going to say something that is going to make it sound like I didn't like this book, but I actually really enjoyed this book. So in the beginning of this book, it does actually read as a young adult book, and I feel like almost Actually, there is not a mermaid romance that I have read yet that does not read like young adult, because it always, something about the way authors describe the fins and the colors and the having animal friends in the ocean always makes me think young adult. And I honestly thought that about this book when I started reading it, because it does describe like the shimmering armor. She has a familiar, and if you didn't realize what I was talking about, this is a retelling or a addition to the Little Mermaid world. So it follows the Little Mermaid's daughter. I'm not sure if Ariel is named Ariel in this book. I can't remember because I read this a little while ago. But I'm not sure if her mother's name is Ariel or if the author changed it for the book. But anyways, so it is about Ariel's daughter. And she obviously was born from a mermaid and a human, but she has chosen to adopt her mermaid side more than anything. And so she has gone to live in the mermaid kingdom with her aunt, who is now the queen. Something happens that causes her to lose her fins. So she is captured, or she is stranded on land. So she gets a summons from her mother, who is the queen. She absolutely does not want to go back. She doesn't want anything to do with the human world, with land, anything. She is completely set. She is like a queen's guard in her oceany kingdom, and she doesn't want to come back. But somehow she loses her fin and she is stranded on land, and she has no idea how to get it back. And she is found by this very sexy swashbuckling man who just happens to be walking down the beach. And this happens to be the son of the sea witch. So, and he doesn't really know who she is right away. She doesn't know who he is right away. But then they find out, and it is kind of a hate to lovers slash like distrust to lovers. I don't know what you would call it, but obviously it is the son of the sea witch who destroyed her mother's life, according to this daughter. And there are a lot of misunderstandings, and it's really, really interesting. Without going completely into it, it's really, really interesting. The reason I liked this book so much was because of the way that the author twisted the original story and made it fit with what she was doing to these characters who are the children of the original characters. And again, the beginning does read young adult, because like something about just like the way the kingdom underwater was described just is like really cute, and like, I don't know. But when they do the things, when it starts to get steamy, it is very, very, very much adult. So don't be discouraged if you do choose to pick up this book and you read the beginning and you kind of get that young adult feel. I swear that it goes away as you read through the book, but it was really interesting. There are twists and turns. I love fairy tale retellings for this reason, because they always seem to twist something around and make it different from the source material, which I really love. And I just really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. I have not read any other Little Mermaid fairy tale retellings since. There are a couple that I have on my list. I know there's a really dark romance retelling of Little Mermaid that I have on my list that I have not been able to commit to because it's very, very long, but I will be reading it eventually. The next book that I have on my list, we're getting into the really, really good ones. So the next three that I am naming are probably some of my favorite books. And I have so many favorite books. Like, I always say that a book is on my top 10, but what I really mean is a book is in my top 100 or something. And it's just really memorable, and I would just recommend it to anybody, no matter what. This book is called The Maleficent Faerie, and it is the second in For Love of the Villain. It's in a series, but they are not connected technically, so you don't have to read them in order. I actually did not read the first one, which I just said that I haven't read any other Little Mermaid retellings, but the first book in this For the Love of the Villain series is actually another Little Mermaid retelling that I do have on my list, but it's not the one I was talking about, the really long one. So I guess I just had a brain fart there, but the first one is about the sea witch who is a male in this situation. Anyways, it's not about that book because I haven't read that book. But The Maleficent Faerie was written by Rebecca F. Kenney, which I have mentioned on this channel before. I just accidentally stumble across her books and I read them and I love them. So this book is a retelling of Sleeping Beauty, as you may or may not have gathered from the title. And in this situation, or in this world, Sleeping Beauty has a fairy bodyguard who is a badass fairy. Her entire life is dedicated to protecting the princess. The character of Maleficent is actually a male in this situation. And he wants to kidnap Sleeping Beauty because the void is spreading and it is killing people and it is like spreading its curse throughout the land. To break the curse, he thinks that he could get the princess, put her to sleep, do the sleep spell, and save the land. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot more that goes into depth about the magic around that. He's very self-sacrificing, but he is thought of as evil because he wants to kidnap the princess, and he's always been trying to kidnap the princess. But in reality, he is trying so hard to protect his people and protect the world and so forth. But he is thought of as the villain because of the process or the way that he goes about things. He is very much a sacrifice a few for the many kind of character. And I thought that was really interesting because he definitely holds on to those morals or those values throughout the entire book. He's very, very hard on his stances, and I loved that because you don't often see characters like that. And so he kind of remains the villain through the entire book, but he's very misunderstood. And I just thought it was really interesting because the story starts out where he is trying to kidnap the princess, and the bodyguard puts on a glamour that makes her look like the princess so that she gets kidnapped in her place to protect her. So he thinks that he has the princess and he's taking her to go do this entire spell until he finds out that she's not the princess. He finds out that he got some fairy bodyguard, and it's just really interesting. And I can't really say too much more about their relationship because it gets very complicated, and there's a lot of like interesting little twists and turns in this book that I just really, really liked. I would have to say, so far, out of all the fairytale retellings that I have read, this is definitely one of the best. It has the most references to the original source material, and the relationship was so good. And if you're like me, see, in a lot of books, and if you read a lot of romance, you know what I'm talking about. In a lot of books, the guy is very dominating, and women love that. We love it. But in this book, there are some emotional issues that the Maleficent fairy has that cause him to be more of a submissive type. And this fairy girl is a very strong-willed, physically and mentally strong person who is very willing to oblige in those areas when things start to get steamy. So I loved it for that reason. I mean, I loved it for a lot of reasons, but I really thought that was worth a note because it's not often that you see that in books. So I would just read it. Just read it. I mean, if you're here and you watch my videos, then you probably read romance books, and I just read the book. The next one that I have on my list is, it is a very loose Beauty and the Beast retelling. And it is called The King's Bride. And it is the first in the Chronicles of Ern by Beck Michaels. I say loosely because the concept of kidnapping or having somebody captive who thinks you are very evil and very awful, and then, you know, realizing that you don't really know each other and then finding ways to get to know each other, that concept is here. This is a very beautiful world that Beck created. And it's basically in this land of magic and snow, and we have this very, like, this culture that was very Norwegian to me. Like, it seemed very Viking inspired. And I love the way that she did, like, she had all these different cultures in the book that were very obviously inspired by different cultures in the real world. So our main character comes from a tribe or a group of people that is very Viking inspired. And then you have like this very Asian, Chinese kind of inspired culture that is off on in its own area. You have these bird people. I mean, like, it was a very interesting world, and I really, really enjoyed just like hearing about everything. Aside from the story, I just thought the world was really interesting. But you have this girl who she went through a trauma, a very, very horrible trauma. And since then, she's kind of carried that burden on her shoulders. She is one of the daughters of the chief or the earl, jarl, or whatever the equivalent would be in this world, and basically the leader of their clan. And he doesn't like her because of this trauma that she went through, which I don't want to get into it, but there are reasons why he blames her for things. And so she carries that on her shoulders. She also carries the fact that she really wants to be protective of her sister, She is kind of she's a protector, is a king who keeps the land in perpetual winter, and therefore everybody that lives under his rule hates him, because they're like, you know, if it wasn't winter all the time, we might not be starving all the time, because we would be able to hunt and we'd be able to find animals. So everyone hates this king, and nobody really knows what he is. Nobody knows. People say he's a god, people say he's a demon, people say all kinds of things, because he's very, very powerful. He lives in his big old ice castle, surrounded by magical roses. They don't like him, but they're very scared of him. And through a series of unfortunate events, she breaks a rule and she steals one of his flowers for magical purposes. And in order to save his clan, her father, who doesn't really like her in the first place, hands her over to the king and says, marry my daughter. And please forgive us for whatever she did to offend you. And the king, for some reason, agrees, and he takes her as his bride, his very, very unwilling bride. And, you know, the father is thinking like, oh, we'll get in his good graces, and it'll be great. And also I can get rid of the daughter that I don't like. So she goes to marry the king. And she finds out that this ice king, or this, like, I think some people call him Ice Phoenix, because he does shift into like this crazy magical ice bird thing. But she goes to his castle and she marries him very unwillingly. So her whole plan is to get in close with him so she can figure out how to assassinate him. But obviously things don't go as planned. She starts to get to know him. She starts to understand things that he's done, reasons why he does things. And she starts to see a very, like a softer side to him. And it turns into a very, very beautiful and very complex love story. There's so many things about this story that are just great. It's a very deep world. It's a very well-built world. It's a very complicated world. And I would definitely recommend it. And the last one on my list is one that I just barely finished. And unlike everything else on this list that had kind of a serious undertone where there was a lot of trauma and a lot of violence and you know, things like that, this had me laughing out loud through the entire book. And that book is Wicked, Ugly, Bad by Cassandra Gannon. Think of Once Upon a Time, but think of it with much more adult humor. So we have one of the ugly stepsisters. Her name is Scarlet, and her other stepsister have been sent to the Wicked, Ugly, Bad institution? I don't know, but all the villains that are in this institute or in this place, this like psych prison, they call it the Wub Club. They were sent there by Cinderella, who was engaged to marry the prince, Prince Charming. And in this world, you're either bad or you're good. And everybody knows if you're bad or good. They know if you were, like, you're born one or the other. And, like, you just know from the beginning whether you're bad or good, I guess. So everybody in this Wub Club is bad. And they've all done something bad. But the twist is that a lot of the good people are not good. And Cinderella is one of them. She is an awful, awful, awful person who just comes off being this perfect, beautiful, charitable woman. But you have this group of people, Scarlet and a bunch of other like villains, who are always coming to their social, like their share circle, which is like, you know, part of their therapy or their whatever in this psych like prison. And one of the other people in this social circle is, or in this share circle, is a big bad wolf who is very sexy, because wolves in this universe are very sexy, but they're also very objectified. They play wolf ball, which is a very dangerous sport, and they're basically slaves because they're so sexy that people, like I said, objectify them in a lot of different ways, sexual, sports, whatever, you name it. And they're all naughty men. And this guy, I think his name is Maroc. Might be wrong. But he is part of her share circle with a bunch of other people. And they all of them, you know, they all know they belong there. Scarlet does not belong there. She is convinced that she does not belong there, and she wants to get out and expose Cinderella for the awful, awful person that she is. In this world, you also have fated mates, and they are called your one true love. And it's something that you know or you don't. Like, it's something that when you meet that person, you know that they are your one true love. So we have a big bad wolf who knows that Scarlet is his one true love, and she does not like him. So Scarlet hatches this plan to get out of this psych ward. And she kind of gets everybody in her 2 p.m. or whatever, 10 a.m. share circle. They call it something. It's their share circle. And it's kind of like their own little mini club inside of this institution. And she gets them all in on it. And they figure out a way, a very, very complex way. I mean, like a third of the book is their escape from this psych ward. And it's a very, like, you know, she's the idea person. They all kind of say it. She's very smart and she comes up with plans. They come up with this very complex plan to escape. And eventually they do, and she is forced to work together with the big bad wolf. Basically, it's this like really ragtag team of villains getting out of this institute, or her biggest goal is to expose Cinderella for the horrible person that she is and to free Prince Charming from her seductive grasp or whatever. There's not much else I can say about it besides the fact that it's just really funny and it's such a wild ride, and it is just like, I had such a good time reading this book. It took me a while because I've been very, very slow with reading lately, and this is the very last one that I read for this list. So it did take me a while, but I'm so happy I read it. I just thought it was so funny. Like, it had steamy parts in it, so if you are looking for the steam, absolutely has it. But overall, it's so funny, and I loved the way the world was set up when you have, like, how you have the good and the bad, and the dynamic between everybody, and it was comedic and weird, and I just really, really liked it. And I'm really excited to read more of Cassandra Gannon's stuff because I just love her writing style. So if you're looking for something a little bit more lighthearted that is more comical and not as heavy in the drama and the angst like a lot of the other books that I just listed are, I would absolutely read that book. Those are all the books that I have for you guys today. I have a lot of other videos that I'm going to be doing this holiday season. I do have an event coming up this weekend, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do 2 videos this week or just the one. Again, I might be slowing it down a little bit over the holidays because there's a lot of stuff going on. I do have a TBR, which is just really weird for me, that I was going to go over today, but then I realized I wouldn't be able to remember what any of the books are about that I put on my TBR. But I am going far outside of my comfort zone, and I have a big list of contemporary like holiday romance books, which is absolutely not the kind of stuff that I read, but I really wanted to try something new. So I have a bunch of, luckily they're all audiobooks, so I don't have to put much effort into it. So in case I just really don't want to read these books, I just have to listen to them. The first one that I am reading or listening to right now is actually turning out to be kind of cute, so I may or may not be excited about the books that I have on my list. But otherwise, I do have a lot of plans, and I'm super excited to get into them. Thank you everybody for being patient. Thank you everybody for being here and watching my videos. Leave a like, it really helps me out. I'm trying to grow my channel. I just hit 500 subscribers, which is really, really exciting, and my next goal is 600, obviously. I mean, my goal is much more than that, but my next small milestone is going to be 600 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed yet and you liked this video, please consider subscribing. It really helps me out. Comment if you have read any of these books, or if you have any fairy tale retelling romances that you want to suggest that I may not have heard of yet. If you have any, please put them in the comments. I really appreciate you all being here, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!